As we step into places time tried to forget, remember, every shadow has a story. If you're drawn to the hidden and the untold, stay with us. Like the video and subscribe for more. In the year 1579, in the ancient stone city of Toledo, there lived a young woman who believed deeply in silence. Her name was Magdalena de la Cruz. Orphaned by sickness, before she had learned what childhood was meant to feel like, she entered the convent at 12, not from faith, but because she had nowhere else to go. The convent was a cold building of thick walls and narrow corridors, where sound seemed afraid to travel. Yet for Magdalena, silence felt like safety. For many years, she lived as any nun did, rising before dawn to pray, scrubbing the chapel floor, spinning wool for the poor. She spoke little and listened always. And slowly, others began to notice that when Magdalena prayed, she did not seem to pray to God in heaven, but to something very near, just beyond the veil of breath. Her quiet devotion drew attention. Then, one winter evening, during Vespers, she collapsed. Her body trembled, her eyes rolled back, and a voice slipped from her lips, calm and steady, naming secrets no one had spoken aloud. Word traveled faster than sermons. People came to hear the nun who heard angels. Some believed she was blessed. Others feared she was something else. But power listens more closely than faith ever does. And soon, the church came not to worship Magdalena, but to question her. When the church began its inquiry, they arrived with courtesy. That is the first sign of danger. The archbishop sent scholars and priests who watched her in silence, measuring not her words but her calm. A woman who trembles is predictable. A woman who stays composed is dangerous. Her calmness meant she believed the voices she heard were real, and if the divine could speak to her, it did not need them. Yet Magdalena claimed nothing. She only said she listened. But listening, when the world expects silence, is rebellion. Visitors increased. Nobles, priests, merchants. Some came for prophecy, others for advantage. A prophecy can be a weapon as easily as a prayer. Soon her name rippled through Castile and beyond. The church saw not holiness, but influence. Influence can unseat thrones. So the questions changed. They asked not what she heard, but what she wanted. And every time she said nothing, their fear grew. Those who desire no power are hardest to control. The Mother Superior was called before the council. When she returned, she would not meet anyone's eyes. The decision had already been made, not because of what Magdalena said, but because of what others might do in her name. The danger was not the voice. The danger was the listeners. As winter deepened, pilgrims crowded the convent gates. Some knelt, some wept, some demanded her blessing. The church saw devotion turning to allegiance. A kingdom does not fear heresy as much as it fears division. The archbishop acted quietly. One night, wheels of a carriage echoed through the courtyard. Lanterns swayed. Boots struck stone. Men from the Holy Office entered with calm precision. They asked Magdalena to come with them. She obeyed, wrapping her shawl. bowing once to the cross. No struggle, no miracle, just the sound of the door closing. Inside, the sisters prayed. Outside, the sky burned with torchlight reflected on snow. No fire was lit for her body, only for her name. The city would speak it less each day until silence itself became the verdict. They brought her not to a cell of chains, but to a convent of isolation, walls thick, air still, windows narrow. She could walk, pray, breathe, but never speak. Silence became a punishment. The church did not accuse her of falsehood. It simply withdrew belief. And belief, once withdrawn, can erase a life more completely than death. Outside, sermons continued. Inside, seasons circled. Magdalena prayed because she knew nothing else. Without words, prayer became thought, and thought grew heavy. Sometimes she wondered if she had mistaken grief for revelation. Yet she felt no anger, only the slow ache of vanishing. A person does not die when the body fails, but when they are no longer remembered. And still the vines on the courtyard wall clung to stone. Each time she passed, she placed her hand upon them, not in longing, not in grief, but in recognition. Years passed. The city changed. The bells rang for other names. But whispers returned, soft as dust through light. New novices felt her presence in the corridors, the calm in her step. They said prayer felt different near her door. Magdalena no longer sought visions. She listened inwardly. She discovered that silence is not absence, it is space where truth survives. Outside, her story drifted again. Merchants told their children of a woman who heard hearts. The poor remembered her warmth. A whisper can travel farther than a decree. And so her story lived on, unrecorded, unclaimed, unstoppable. Her hair turned white like frost over fields. She aged without bitterness, lighter with each year, as if shedding the weight of being misunderstood. Young sisters watched her pray with eyes open, seeing the world itself as scripture. One winter morning, frost traced the window glass. She did not rise. A sister found her lying peacefully, hands folded, as though completing a long conversation with silence. No bell rang, no ceremony was held. The church recorded one sentence: Magdalena de la Cruz, misguided. But outside, in the courtyard, the vines had begun to grow again. Not a miracle, only endurance. And endurance, too, can be sacred. Decades later, the convent fell to ruin. Stones were reused, names forgotten. Yet among the ruins, one wall remained the wall where the vines still clung. No record bore her story, but old women told their daughters of a nun who once listened so deeply the world spoke back. History wrote her out, but memory rewrote her in whispers. Some nights, when prayers fade, the quiet sounds like someone breathing nearby. Those who know how to listen hear it, because some lives do not need monuments. They only need to be remembered, and some voices are not heard in words. They are heard in silence,